We are continuing with our session about death in Judaism. I'm reminding everyone that before that we talked about what happens once a person dies and the status of before, Oh wait, I don't think I'm sharing. Let me share this. Oh, hi, Elizabeth. Here, now I'm sharing it. So we talked about right before. Yes, please close it. And then we talked about getting ready for the funeral and purification of the body and the shroud and the casket and all. And then we talked about the funeral and how the funeral is run. And today we're talking about the Shivah and the Shloshim in the year, and basically all the other mourning customs that precede, that follow the funeral. Once the person is buried and the funeral is completed, begin a whole year of customs of mourning, and they're divided into three periods of time. The first period of time is the Shivah. The second period is the Shloshim, and then the last part is the year, okay, which ends with the Yortzeit. And we're going to talk about all these concepts in a minute, and I'll explain the Hebrew behind them. Sometimes it's Yiddish. Okay, so first Shiva. The meaning of the word Shiva is 7. Okay, and it's 7 days that any Jewish mourner needs to sit over their loved ones, and I often get asked when does the Shiva begins? The Shiva begins once the burial is over. So a lot of times, and we did this also when my father passed away. Thank you everyone for all the condolences, notes and messages that I got from you. It was very moving. I actually want to light this candle in memory of him. So in memory of Rabbi Michael Graetz, Harav Michael Mordechai Yosef Alevi. Okay. That's the Yortzeit candle in memory. Thank you. So when my father passed away, for example, we made sure that the funeral was in the afternoon, because he passed away in the morning, and in Israel they always try to have the burial as soon as possible. If it's possible to do it the same day, you do it the same day. If you have to wait from someone coming from abroad, you delay it by a day or two, but usually not more than that in Israel. But we talked about that when we talked about funerals. But you also they also try to have the funeral before sundown, because then you can count that day as the first day of the Shiva. Okay. So if the burial is at night time, usually you don't do it nighttime, but sometimes it starts maybe before it gets dark, but sometimes it somehow gets long, and then the burial only ends when it's really dark. So then you don't count the day that it started, you count like the following day as the first day. So people want to really count the day of burial, so you try to finish the burial before it's dark. So that's when Shiva begins. If someone passes away during a Jewish holiday, okay, so first of all, there's no burial on Shabbat or on a Jewish holiday, but on Sukkot and Passover, we have the intermediate day, the Chol HaMoed, okay? So you don't, you do the funeral on Chol HaMoed, but you don't count Shiva then. You only start counting the Shivah afterwards, okay? Kind of really sad. I don't know if anyone followed the news in Israel this Sukkot, okay? A lot of soldiers, Israel was in Lebanon and was fighting, and a lot of soldiers were killed during that 8 days of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret. So there were funerals, but like maybe like 30 or 40 homes around Israel started sitting Shiva all together only after the holiday. It was like a big thing. It was very sad. So that's what happens when the burial happens in a Jewish holiday. Now, it's also interesting that there is a custom. I mean, it's not just a custom; it's a Jewish law, halacha, that a Jewish holiday also concludes the Shiva. So if someone passes away, let's say on a Wednesday, okay, and there's a holiday on a Friday, so the holiday stops the Shiva altogether. You don't go back to counting the Shiva after the holiday, okay? And the same for the Shloshim, we'll talk about that
Rabbi,
as well.
Shabbat counted as a holiday, or Shabbat is not
No,
counted?
Shabbat is counted as a Shiva day.
It is
But it
counted.
doesn't stop Shiva.
It
So,
doesn't, okay.
so if you bury someone on a Wednesday,
You
you count all the way to Tuesday, okay? And the way you count, so you count the day of the burial. Let's say it's a Wednesday, so you would count the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You would count Saturday, Shabbat,
Sorry.
then Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday morning is when you get out off the Shiva. And that's another rule for mourning, which is a bit of the day is considered like the whole day. Okay, so in the morning, you do like, the morning minyan, the morning prayers, or whatever you do. And then people come to you and they awake you up from the Shiva. They get you up from the Shiva and they say a traditional saying on the seventh day. They come and they say in Hebrew, "Kumu avelim," arise, mourners. Okay, and they actually pull you. They actually did that to me when I was in Israel. Now they pull you up, and then you go outside on the street, and you walk on outside like you're back in life. It symbolizes that you're back in life. It's a beautiful custom, and we actually, my parents live very close to the synagogue where my father was the rabbi for more than 35 years, I think. And even after he retired, that was the synagogue till his last day. So we actually walked on the route to the synagogue, like the way he would walk every day. So that was really nice.
Rabbi, if the Shiva would typically end, if the seventh day would be Saturday, would they come to your home Friday morning instead then?
Yes. Again, if the Shiva ends on Saturday, yeah. So Friday, no, sorry.
Sunday.
No, if let's say someone is buried on a Sunday,
Right.
Okay, Shiva should be over on a Friday, okay, on a Saturday, right? So Shiva in that case would be over Friday afternoon.
Or not Saturday morning.
Not Saturday morning. There's no morning, but
I see.
So they would come to your house Friday morning to walk you around.
or actually Friday afternoon,
Thank you.
like an hour or two before Shabbat. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so that's about counting Shiva, etc. I've often asked about sitting less than 7 days. Okay, and I think the custom that I've seen in this community, and I guess also in the West Coast, is not to sit like the whole 7 days. And people, I think it's mainly because people are not aware of the obligation to sit 7 days, and they're not used to it. So But in the beautiful book that we're reading, The Observant Life, they talk about that. So I wanted to read that part. The only problem is I marked it here. So let's see where I marked, and then I'll know how much to read. It's on page 295, and it says, the general principle in counting the day of Shivah is that part of a day counts as the whole day. Thus, one counts the remainder of the day of burial as the first day, and it is normal only to observe the laws of Shivah briefly on the seventh day, as I explained. The decision on the part of some moderns to return to work after only 3 days of Shivah should be countenanced only in cases of extreme financial hardship. And even then, the work permitted should be done as privately and modestly as possible. Okay, otherwise, ignoring the end of the Shiva week can neither be sanctioned by halacha nor considered at all advisable from the perspective of the healing process that must follow loss. Okay, so it is preferable to really try to do a Shiva and to sit all 7 days. If it's too much for people to receive comforters all the time, that is okay, and some people also open the house just for a few hours a day because they can't handle people coming all day long. Okay, so they say, the house will be open in the evening time, and it includes like a evening service, and that is, not everyone is able to sit there, and I have to say, it was hard work. We had a very open house, and we didn't think it, I think, all the way through, because people came in. People didn't come early in the morning, but we had morning service at 9 o'clock, and then people just stayed all day long till 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. Sometimes between 2 and 4, there was like much less traffic, so we would make turns with my sisters. Everyone would go and sneak, like a quick nap. But then you also have to eat in front of people, and and you also don't always eat healthy because of that. And it is I think it is advisable to try to have sometimes, but sometimes if it's someone like my father, who's very well known, and people are coming from all over Israel, and they come when they could come, and and you're there, to also they're coming to comfort you, but you're also comforting them in a way, which is part of the psychological process of what happens in the Shiva. We'll talk about that in a moment. Yes.
In the Reform movement, they just do 3 days.
Right.
The rabbis actually say 3 days. If you ask them how long is the Shiva, they'll tell you 3 days.
Right. So that,
unless you want to do 7, and then they'll accommodate you, but that's not theirs.
Yeah, and that is it is interesting, but it is based on something in the scripture that say that the 3 first day are like the hardest for the mourner. Okay, and then afterwards it's hard, but it's not as hard. Okay, it's sort of like that's what the traditions say. And also, as I said before, if someone has some financial issues they have to attend to, and they need to go to work, so they can do that after 3 days. But again, today it's really preferable to try to sit all 7 days of the Shiva. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the status between the time of death and burial of?
Oh, I actually spoke about that in my previous slide. I don't think you were here, but I'll send you. I mean, all the recordings are here, and everyone's welcome to watch them. But that's called. I'll just briefly answer that. That's called onen or aninut, which means that you are not obligated to do any of the mitzvot, and until after burial. Your main obligation is to attend to the person, to the burial.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Shiva is done for person to pass away or
For
for
what?
I said, Shiva is done for person who died or for those people who are mourners.
That's
know
a
this is
very good
both,
question. I think
but
it's a very good
it's
question. I
interesting.
think it's for both, okay?
But
And we'll see how it serves as both. But the obligation is, the basic
Sure.
obligation is for the person who deceased. You sit 7 days
You wanna be a
to
little,
mourn their
I don't know how you
loss.
do these
Okay?
chairs.
And that brings us to the next question, who is obligated to sit? Okay, so just like in any other mourning rule, it's the 7 people, like immediate family, what we call today. So that would be son, that like a son or daughter. That would be wife or husband. That would be a sister, brother, father, and mother, and daughter. I said son or daughter, said son. Yeah. So it's those immediate 7 people. Okay, and they need to sit. Just like the ones that are doing the tear, also in their clothes. And I often get asked, and also in the conservative movement, they address it here. What if it's like adopting parents? Okay, parents that adopted someone, and you're also supposed to sit shiva for them as well. And what if it's non-Jewish parents or siblings that pass away? So obviously there's no Jewish funeral for them, right? Because they might have a Christian or any other kind of funeral of their own faith. But if someone feels they want to sit Shiva for a loved one, they're able to do that. The best is to consult a rabbi and to see what would be the best way to do that, and to allow also someone who wants to say Kaddish in memory of someone, a beloved, an immediate family that they lost, is not the usual custom, but in more modern eras has become a custom as well. Okay, where to sit Shiva? Okay, the preference is to sit Shiva at the home of the deceased. Okay, for that notion that this is where he lived, to honor his life. Also, some mystical thinking that the soul of the person is wandering around the world for 7 days, and they often come to the house where they were. I don't know, but it's like a custom. But often people need to split the places they sit Shiva. Okay, sometimes someone lives overseas and they want to sit part of the Shiva with their family overseas, so they sit part of it in Israel, for example, and part of it in the United States. I have friends that have done that, or even when my father passed away. I had a lot of friends in Jerusalem that were just not able to come over, so I sat 2 days in Jerusalem, and I actually had very specific hours, like in the morning and Friday from 11 to 2 o'clock, and then have to get ready for Shabbat. So and people left, and then Saturday night again, I sat from 6 to 10 o'clock. And it was very nice. A lot of people came from Jerusalem. They were very grateful that they're able to comfort me as well. They didn't know my father. They didn't know the rest of my family. The only association that they had was really with me. So they want to, come and comfort me. So, and actually my sister did the same thing as well, at the same hours as well, up in the north where she lives. So it worked out very well. And my mother and my sister sat back home where my father passed away, so it actually worked very well. So it is possible to split the Shiva, and sometimes you also have a few siblings and they can't all sit together. Okay, so often you would see that someone's sitting in one city and someone's sitting in another city, and and just that's how it goes. Yeah.
In the case of a person who's in the military and someone in their family passes away, does the military provide, and then the person, is in a battle area, can't come back, does the military do something for that person or?
So in Israel, you get 7 days if like you have an immediate person that died in your family. And interestingly, my kids who were in the army they got I think 3 days. For grandparents, you get 3 days from the army. So that was nice. That
And
they
here in
let
the
them
United
out.
States, the American Red Cross coordinates with active duty military and supports. When my husband passed 2 years ago, my son was on an assignment in the Middle East, and his commanding officer actually released him before my request, and the paperwork caught up.
Wow,
Interesting.
wow, that's
His
amazing.
CO
That's great,
let him
yeah.
leave Wednesday, and my request didn't get approval till Friday.
Oh,
Oh,
wow,
nice.
So,
that's beautiful.
but the Red Cross is in the United States is on standby to
Wow.
assist
Really?
the military
That's really
and
nice.
our armed forces
Did they
personnel.
fly him? Did they fly
Yeah.
him home?
Yeah,
Wow.
it took a long time from
Oh, God.
he was in Qatar.
Oh,
Wow, wow,
So,
wow, that's amazing.
but there's a compassionate group
Yeah.
of people
Very
working.
nice.
That's good to know. That's really good to know.
Rabbi,
Yes.
this wasn't here for the other session. Did you talk about when the date of death is unknown?
No, I'm going to talk about that today.
Okay.
So we talked about where to sit Shiva. And also I'm sometimes asked, do you have to sleep at the place where you're sitting Shiva? Okay. There is a preference to even sleep there, okay, but sometimes it doesn't work. Not everyone has a place to sleep in the house, so other arrangements could be done as well. After returning from the cemetery, there is for the Shiva, at the beginning of the Shiva, there's a meal of healing, which is called in Hebrew Sudat Avra'ah, and I think here we call it meal of condolence, right? Or there's another name for it.
Yeah, condolence.
Bereavement meal or something like that, right? Meal of condolence.
Condolence.
In that, members of the community, and I think we actually have a committee here, right? That Margie here chairs, that from on behalf of a sisterhood that actually go to the homes of the mourners, and while they're at the cemetery, they prepare the whole house. And for the Shiva, they cut up the vegetables, they prepare everything. So when people come back from the cemetery for the Shiva, it's all ready. It's a beautiful mitzvah. I've seen it happen a few times here, and it's really an amazing project of the sisterhood that Margie is leading with
Dana, I have
Dana,
Lonnie
yeah.
Diner helps. There's
right.
few,
There's a
a
whole
few
team.
in the army.
Right. And there are traditional foods that are served at these meals, boiled eggs or lentils that are round, okay? Things that sort of like symbolize a circle of life. Interesting. And surprisingly, wine, okay? Drinking
Now that we
wine.
don't do.
Drinking wine, well, maybe we should start. Drinking wine at the Shiva apparently is a old Jewish custom. And I was even asked at my dad's Shiva if it's okay to even drink wine. I said, of course it is. They looked at me as like, what are you talking about? I said, yes, it is. And I'll read to you the part on page 296 where it says, the drinking of wine at the house of mourning is probably based on Proverbs 31:6 from the Bible, which says, give strong drink to the hapless and wine to the embittered. And in the Talmud, Rabbi Chanin goes even further and says that wine was created only for the purpose of comforting mourners.
Wow.
Okay, interesting. So the notion that wine, would sort of like ease you down and help you, with the process, as long as you then The rabbis have a debate how much wine. Because you don't want people to start getting drunk and going wild at a shiva, right? So they limited it to 10 cups.
10
Wow.
cups.
Well, no, but
Small
10
cups.
no, but 10 cups at the ancient time was like a third wine and
Yeah.
2/3 water. They had the wine was kind of like strong and a little bit bitter, so they had to always add water to it. But still, it's not.
Well, that
It's
goes-
still a lot.
Shots.
Yeah,
That really goes.
right.
It's
Yeah.
interesting when you cited that, it's for the purpose of comforting the mourners, and it takes back to your question, is Shiva for the deceased or for the mourners? And there is a balance, because we lost my mom in April, and my sister and I commented how exhausting it was to be going through the process and having so little downtime for reflection while comforting others. And it was something my mother would have wanted us to do and we felt compelled to do, but there's only so much in the reservoir. And yet this sighting does talk about the comfort of the mourners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Very
you could also,
true.
if you go back to not necessarily ancient times, people drank watered wine because the water was not
Right.
very good.
Yeah, and the wine would sort of like kind of like purify it in a way. Yeah,
No, it's
that's true. Yes.
when my husband died during COVID and nobody was allowed to come to the house. There
Me
was people
too.
were you too.
Mm,
And when you sit, you know how
That was
difficult
hard.
you mentioned how difficult it is having all these people.
yeah.
It is 1,000 times more difficult to sit home alone.
Wow.
You're shaking your head.
I'm sure.
You're sitting home alone and you're staring at yourself and at your children and you're just, the hole in your heart keeps expanding
Wow.
instead of being comforted, it just goes like that. So it's very interesting.
That's I think is probably the best way to describe why you need Shiva.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because you
then when
need
came,
people
you need
coming
that.
in. You talk about,
Yeah.
the deceased, you talk about his life, you talk about your relationship with him. People care, people give you hugs.
Right.
It was, I walked into the parking lot today and George came and gave me a hug, and that was comforting, and
Yeah.
that was just beautiful. And people need that. People, especially, when they lose their loved ones,
Yeah.
that's
Rabbi, I
What-
just
yes.
want to share. I was two times I was in Israel and I was sitting Shiva over there. What amazed me that in families who were not religious people, but Shiva in Israel, this is sacred thing.
Yeah.
It's like
I-
sacred thing, oh Shiva, to let you go
Yeah.
from your work
Yeah.
to express Shiva.
Exactly.
Then bring
I
It's
think
like-
what you're saying is
it's like
very
a-
important, Sophia. In Israel, first of all, there's law. It's a Jewish country, so once someone passes away, you get 7 days, and they're all paid for by work. Okay,
Yeah.
everyone. And also very secular people. Everyone sits Shiva. The concept of Shiva is very well known, and everyone observes it. They don't observe maybe having all the religious services, but sitting those days and people knowing to come and comfort you is very, very common, and including saying a Kaddish, which is a religious thing, but it became like a very Israeli thing as well. So that's very interesting. And that leads me, jumping here. Okay, that leads me here to the next part, which is the Shiva services. Okay, so usually in more observant homes, you have morning, mincha, and evening services where you say different psalms, and you do the services, and then the mourners are able to recite Shiva. We had morning services and evening services. We actually didn't have mincha services. Anyone that wanted to do mincha did it like on their own, and it was very powerful. And also, it also allows for people who want to come in a specific time to the Shiva, and they don't have a lot of time to come and sit down. They come for the services, and then they go afterwards. And that also served as a good place for a lot of people to come to Shiva like that.
Are there significant differences between the way an Orthodox or a very strict Orthodox or Haredi person would sit Shiva and more conservative person, or is it pretty much uniform?
No, there are differences. I'm actually going into that
Sorry.
now. So one of them would be the services. Okay, like in an Orthodox place, it would be only, it would be 3 times a day, not one or one, not two. They would do all the services. They would say all the Psalms. It would be very strict, and they would like study a lot of things in memory of the deceased all day long. You light a Shiva candle, okay? Everyone does that. I think even here, people like have it's like a day, it's a candle that
7-day candle.
7 day. It's a large
Oh.
7-day candle. That actually I have one in my office. I should have bring it. It's like this. This is like 72 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like taller. It's like for 7. It's actually not 7 days. It's actually for 9 days. In Israel, it's for 7 days. In America, you need it for 9 days. You know why? Because you also have a second day of Yom Tov
Here's
here,
a holiday.
right? Because you have the 8th day here, and so it's 8 or 9 days. I remember. Okay,
But you know why?
so that's one thing. Another tradition is covering mirrors or TVs. Anything that you would see your own reflection in is covered. So that's, I don't know if people here observe that. Sometimes, okay. I don't think we did that in my house, but actually there's no TV in the living room. And I don't think we have mirrors also in the living room. So yeah. But I've seen when I went to Avi Cohen's Shiva at their home, so they covered the mirrors and the TV there.
What's the thought behind that?
And the thought is that you're supposed to be focused on the deceased and on mourning, and not on how you look. So if you look and like, oh my God, I don't have my makeup,
Right.
or my hair is like, is so, and it's like, it's like the vanity of life. Like you have to be focused more on like the bigger picture. And also you're not supposed to pray in a place where there are mirrors. Okay, so when you have services at the house of the Shiva, so you don't have that as well. And it's a distraction. The TV is on or things like that.
Do you need a minion for Kaddish and when you're sitting Shiva at home?
The answer is yes. However, there are different customs. There's the ancient land of Israel custom that allows you to say Kaddish on your own. It's very rare, but it is a custom that one could follow in case you don't have a minyan. And there's some places where in the ancient land of Israel, they also allowed 6 people to be counted as a minyan to say Kaddish. So they're different customs, but usually it's 10 people that you need, 10 Jewish men, or in the conservative movement, men and women, because we count women in the conservative movement. Yeah.
There's no body. You keep saying burial, so that means there has to be a body. What happens if there's no body? I was thinking of the Israeli soldiers where they don't have. What happens then?
Well, it depends if you know for sure that they're dead or not. If you don't know that they're dead, what?
You know they're dead because a bomb fell, but there's no.
Right.
There's
So
no way
it's a very, very tough situation. Not just because the body's not here emotionally, but halachically, it's also a very tough situation. You do a burial, okay, and afterwards, what happened even now, when the body was retrieved from Gaza months later, so then they just do the burial, but you don't do Shiva again, okay,
So
without
when
a
you do the
ceremony.
first burial,
Okay.
what are you burying?
I think they were just burying some remnant, something that they found,
Anything.
something that they proved that this is how
Because
they were able to
they
prove
don't
that
have a
someone was
coffin,
deceased.
right? So they go just
Yeah.
the body goes whatever piece you get.
No, in Israel, you put it in a coffin. I don't know if they put the piece in a coffin or not. I think they even do that. Yeah, and I think that later on they add the body or whatever is remaining of that. It's a very, very tough situation.
Yeah,
Well, there,
Uh,
that would really getting also to when you don't know the date of death, there are a lot of different circumstances that can arise. I mean, you can start with the Holocaust, it's a big example, but
Right.
over the, someone disappears, you know, really.
yeah. No, so that's I'll read the part about that where um if even an approximate date cannot be reasonably chosen, because if one does not know the date of a relative's death, one should choose a date that is close to the probable date of death, and the yahrzeit should be observed on that day every year. If even an approximate date cannot be reasonably chosen, then any day at all may be selected, either at random or because it has some family significance, and that day should be permanently observed as that person's yahrzeit. Very rare situation, but that's really the custom. Okay, the ruling on that. There's also a special seat. So in Orthodox homes, and also in conservative, there would be like a special seat for a mourner, and it would be lower. Okay, they would be like okay, like this. So it shows they're like closer to the ground and that they're mourning. Okay, and you're not supposed to be, like risen and sitting like everyone else. I have to admit, I did not necessarily observe that. My mother and my father had two nice, comfortable couches, sofas, recliners that they sat on. So I actually sat on the sofa. No, but I felt like very close. I felt very close to my dad sitting, sitting on his sofa. It was really nice in that sense. But you're supposed to sit on a special seat that's lower. And also, you're not supposed to get up to the mourners. Okay, you're supposed to sit down the whole time because you're sitting Shivah. Okay, so the mourners come to you and they comfort you. However, it is hard if you want to give someone a hug or if you want to greet someone. So people vary. So if you're very Orthodox, you would really observe that. But usually you would be more flexible, and I was flexible with that as well. You're also not supposed to greet people. Hi, how are you doing? But sometimes it's a natural thing that comes. And you're not supposed to prepare anything for yourself, any food or anything like that. It all has to be served to you. Okay, so people keep bringing me coffee and cake and a lot of things like that. I could have said no, but yeah, it's not very good for keeping your diet a shiva. Also, not wearing leather shoes, okay, is a custom, and that goes like the morning, and that goes like on Yom Kippur. No leather shoes, no sexual relationships. Also, you don't do that during Shiva. It's part of like to signify mourning, that you're mourning. You also don't shave or get a haircut during the Shiva. You don't go to any celebrations and weddings at that time. However, if there is a wedding scheduled of someone else, okay, you don't cancel the wedding. And even you as a mourner, okay, you're allowed to go to the ceremony itself, and after the ceremony, you go back home.
Rabbi,
Yes.
so not shaving is pretty easy to observe, but what about other personal hygiene?
You could shower. You're not supposed to be doing laundry, okay? But if it's very difficult for you not to shower, for example, which it is for most people, you do. However, don't remember that in ancient times, people would shower maybe once a week. Okay.
Once a year.
Yeah, well, most people were okay
Yeah.
not showering that week. Today, we would be more, more like people would be like, you don't want to like deter people, okay, in that sense. So yeah. But that includes showering as well. Then what happens on Shabbat is interesting because we said Shabbat doesn't cut off the morning, but there's no morning on Shabbat. So you have to shower for Shabbat. You have to prepare for Shabbat. You take off your morning garments, especially if you have a torn shirt, okay, and you put on Shabbat clothes, okay, and you don't do the services at home. You need to go to the synagogue. There's a custom of before the evening service, before Mariv, you sit on the outside until after L'Chadodi. And after L'Chadodi, the synagogue greets the mourners, okay? Everyone like acknowledges that mourners are here, and we say a special blessing for them, which I said in my last lesson. That may you be comforted from heaven. And then on Shabbat, the only thing that signifies that you're a mourner is that you're saying Kaddish. Okay, but everything else you're not supposed to do, for sure not in public. No public mourning in that sense. However, it happens, and it's very natural that people come to you at the synagogue because that's when they see you and they comfort you. So you're not going to stop them and say, no, I don't accept greetings like that on Shabbat. It's like, you got to be sensible about.
Rabbi, I'm sorry, but just get back to the weddings for a minute. If one of the mourners, perhaps a son or a daughter, was scheduled to get married during Shivah, are they still supposed to go through with the ceremony only or not?
Well, if they're not immediate mourners, so I mean, if the wedding could be postponed, it could be postponed. But if it cannot be postponed and a lot of times there are reasons why you cannot postpone it. So you have to go through with the wedding, and there's also what's called like a mitzvah dance. Okay, like there's like at least one dance that you have to have with the bride and groom, and even a mourner needs to be doing that, and then they go back home. Does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Now we move on for the shloshim, okay, and comforting the bereaved. Now, I wanted to talk about comforting the bereaved, which is something very interesting that I realized that during the Shivah, when people came to me, and also, since I returned, that not everyone knows how to comfort the bereaved. Some people don't feel comfortable doing it, and some people just don't know. And I thought it would be a very good, especially because we're recording this session, so it would be good for people listening also on the recording to sort of hear what is like the Jewish way of comforting the bereaved. So I want to read this from page 298 to 299. As noted above, it is traditional to comfort mourners with the hope that they find solace among all Jews who have suffered loss and who have subsequently known recovery. Beyond this, however, what is said is often far less important than the simple presence of others. For visitors to a house of mourning to express their condolences and sympathy in their own words is perfectly adequate. Something as simple as "I'm so sorry" will often be more moving and provide more comfort than an elaborate speech. And people sometimes try to do like a whole speech, and it's not always necessary, okay? Because you know that they're sorry, and sometimes that's just more authentic. Also, there's no need to offer deep wisdom or complicated advice to mourners during the Shivah week. And that I also experienced that as well. Okay, it comes from the good heart of people, but sometimes it's just, you listen as a mourner and you accept it, but it's not always necessary to hear. Listening is far more important than talking, and what conversation there is in the Shiva house should be about the deceased, not about the mourners, and even less appropriately about those who have come to visit. And
Oh,
sometimes
people talk about football and,
yeah,
Yeah.
and people talk about themselves also. A lot of people
Yeah.
talk, and I think it's because it's harder for them psychologically,
Nervous.
and they're nervous, so they talk about themselves and their lives or what they've been through, and it's more appropriate to to have the deceased in mind or the mourners themselves, and talk about them. Visitors should not attempt to keep the mourner's mind off his or her loss, as focusing on the mourner's loss is precisely the point of observing a week of intense mourning in the first place. Jokes, gossip, business talk, and idle chatter do not belong in the Shiva house. I will just say excluding if it's, related to remembering the deceased. Okay, it doesn't have to be a place of seriousness. Some people, like in more orthodox places, people are very careful not to even say funny things that are related to the deceased, okay? But we had a lot of very good moments remembering my father and his great humor, and people laughed, and that was a beautiful way of remembering my father, okay?
Well, people can say a lot of humorous things at the funeral. I don't know why you would not be free to say that during
Right.
Shiva.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And it helps with the grieving process also. Humor is part of life. The best thing visitors can do in a house of mourning is to share their own memories of the deceased with the mourners, or to listen to the mourners' recollections. Sometimes sitting in silence with someone is all that is needed to provide solace. I'm sorry, how do you pronounce this?
Right.
Oh, okay.
yeah, sure.
Certain common sense rules should apply when visiting a house of mourning. Visitors should not come at mealtime. Visitors should neither stay late nor too long. Above all, visitors must be sensitive to the physical and emotional exhaustion of the mourners. It is traditional to bring gifts of food to a house of mourning so that the mourners do not have to look after the preparation of their own meals. Visitors themselves, however, should make a point of not eating or drinking in the Shiva home. Actually, I don't agree with that. I think there is food there, and I think it is very appropriate to eat food at the home of the Shiva. And actually, in the Sephardi tradition, everyone is supposed to eat and say blessings over foods. Okay, and then there are blessings, and the more blessings you have in a home of mourners, the more you remember the deceased and honor their
Well,
memory.
it's also an opportunity for the mourners to talk about the deceased among themselves.
Right, exactly.
Gifts, are children permitted? Are children permitted?
Yeah, children are permitted to come as well. Gifts of substantial food will often be far more appreciated than cakes and cookies. It is also considered appropriate to give gifts of charity to the poor or to worthy organizations in memory of the deceased. Mourners continue the rituals of mourning only for an hour or so on the final day of the Shiva. It is then customary to end the mourning week by walking together in the street or around the block. Okay, I said that before. And if the news of the death of a relative for whom one would normally mourn only comes more than 30 days after that person's death, then the custom is to observe a kind of abbreviated Shiva that lasts for an hour and features only the obligation not to wear leather shoes. Nor, unless the sad tidings regard the death of a parent, is the mourner obligated to rend his or her garment. If, however, the news of a relative's death comes within the 30-day period, the regular week of mourning commences with the arrival of the sad news, as does Shloshim. Okay, because not always you're able to attend the funeral, especially in old days. Not everyone was able to attend funerals. People, body would be buried somewhere else, and you would never be able to go there. And you would hear about the news that your loved one passed away, maybe within the 30 days. Okay,
Rabbi, do
which leads us to the Shloshim. I just want to go a little bit further. Shloshim. First of all, the meaning of the word is 30. Okay, the Shloshim in Hebrew is 30, the first 30 days after the interment means the
burial.
Interment.
interment, sorry,
Yeah.
are collectively called Shloshim, the Hebrew word for 30. The part of these 30 days that follows the week of Shivah is considered a period of reduced mourning. Many of the restrictions of Shivah are lifted, and mourners are permitted to begin reintegrating themselves into society and to resume their daily work, which is what I'm now in the 30 days of the mourning. Okay, so the Shloshim begin when the Shiva ends. Okay, or actually, the Shloshim begins when the Shiva begins,
Right.
because 30 days from the burial, but the laws of the Shloshim begin after the morning of the Shiva, okay? And you count the day of burial. And also here, just like Shiva is cut by Jewish holidays, so is the Shloshim. It's a little bit more difficult. You have to ask the rabbi because it's different if it's like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur or other holidays. But basically, there could be a situation where someone passes away on a Tuesday, okay, and then Rosh Hashanah would be on a Wednesday, and that would cut the Shiva, okay, and then Yom Kippur afterwards would cut the Shloshim. So all the mourning period would be reduced to a very short period of time of 12, 13 days. Okay, so it's a little bit difficult how to count that. The rabbi could always help you with that. Lifting of most of the Shiva restrictions, but not attending parties with live music is usually not done during the Shloshim. Haircuts and shaving is still banned. However, if someone it's interesting, if someone's gonna scare his children, it says in the Talmud, because they're not shaved, so they could, they could shave, or for business reasons. If you're going back to business and it will ruin your business if you're not shaved and you look, unclean, etc., you're allowed to shave as well. Usually, people consult with
Isn't
the
there
rabbi on
something
that.
also that says if someone says to you, you look awful, you need to do
Yes,
something?
and if someone tells you look awful, so you also should shave. Right. Also, you're not supposed to plan to get married within the Shloshim, but you don't cancel wedding plans that were already planned. And on the 30th day, you go to the grave and you recite prayers just like at the Shiva. I actually forgot to mention that on the last day of the Shiva and also on the last day of the Shloshim, you go to the grave, you recite Psalms, you recite the Elam Adai Rachamim again, and you say Kaddish. Okay, so you try to assemble 10 people. If you can't, you would still say Kaddish according to the custom that I told you from the ancient land of Israel. And in Israel, there's also the custom of the unveiling of the tombstone, which is done usually within the 30 days. And in America and other places, it's done after the year.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Mourning for parents is done for full 12 months from the day of burial. Usually you don't attend parties unless they're on Shabbat or weddings, or if it's like for work purpose. Okay, like for example, we'll have the gala here, and it's a party, but I'll be attending it because it's part of my work. And sometimes people go to parties like that, but maybe they refrain from dancing, or they just attend the more social parts, etc., but not like the parts where you're happy. But it really varies according to the person itself. Okay, getting married is permitted during the year as well. Saying Kaddish during the year, you try to go to as many possible times that you would say Kaddish on Shabbat, or for example, today I'll use you as as people that I could say Kaddish after the teaching we're doing here. How many months do you say Kaddish? There are two traditions. There's 11 months and 12 months. Have you heard of this, that you say 11 months? That's a custom based on a Kabbalistic approach, which I actually don't like at all, although it's very common. The thinking there is sort of like the soul of the deceased is like waiting to go into heaven, and if you continue on the 12th month as well to say Kaddish, you're sort of like preventing it from going there in there, or it shows that you're saying Kaddish for this person 12 full months. It's like their soul is not ready yet, and I think it's a tradition. I don't follow it, and when people ask me, I say to observe full 12 months of saying Kaddish, a whole year. You have to say a year. You say a whole year of Kaddish. That's what I think that you should be mourning. Not just the mourning period should be 12 months. Also saying Kaddish should be 12 months. Some people stop the mourning after 11 months. That's what I meant to say, and continue saying Kaddish. But I think both of these should be observed for 12 full months. Sorry for that confusion. There's also an interesting custom of paying someone to say Kaddish. That's in the Orthodox world sometimes. Like it's like someone who only has daughters and doesn't have a son to say Kaddish for him. So in the conservative world, it's not a problem. Girls could say Kaddish. In the strict Orthodox world, they don't always allow women to say Kaddish. So they pay someone like a yeshiva bacher to say Kaddish for you.
The New York City Jewish cemeteries used to have legions of the altars, and they would fight to get the
We
money.
need maybe two more.
Okay.
They would fight to get to be the Kaddish deliverer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was a custom.
Also
Okay,
for people who don't have family. They'll say
Right.
Kaddish for people for a few who set up
exactly. So actually here in the book, they don't like that custom at all. It's preferable to have a friend maybe of the family saying Kaddish, someone that knew the deceased, or in this case, like encourage family members to try and say Kaddish as much as possible, even if it's not every service. Some people really want to make sure every service will be said Kaddish. I think it's up to the person, but I think it is preferable to do it the other way. Yortzeit and the year. Okay, so Yortzeit is 1 year after the death. Okay, not from the day of the burial, but after the death. Okay, how to determine the year is difficult. There's sometimes a leap year, so there's like an extra month. There's Rosh Chodesh, especially like there's some Rosh Chodesh that are 2 days, and sometimes it's 1 day. Not every year. You have to find the correct Hebrew date. It's a little bit complicated. Ask your rabbi on how to do that. And there's also Google Rabbi, okay, that has there's software that can help you do that as well. You do services at the graveside. You go and you do the same Psalms and El Malei Rachamim and Kaddish at the graveside. You have an Aliyah the Shabbat before, and you come to the synagogue and say the Shabbat before. Sometimes the Shabbat after. There are different customs. I don't remember what the custom of C&T is. I'm familiar more with the custom of doing the Shabbat before, but some people do it the Shabbat after. Okay, so that's okay as well. And unveiling and the importance of marking a Jewish grave is something very important. I want to briefly read that custom. Marking a grave clearly is a religious obligation, and this has traditionally been done with a stone marker of some sort Also, setting a tombstone up on the grave of a loved one is another way of memorializing the name of the deceased and his or her Hebrew name and date. Often, the outstanding characteristic of the deceased are noted briefly on the tombstone as well. A tombstone should be inscribed and erected within the first year, but it can be done anytime after Shivah concludes. And in Israel, as I said, it's done within the Shloshim. While there are no firm halachic guidelines regarding the text, the inscription on a tombstone should include the full Hebrew name of the deceased. The name of the deceased individual's father is also mentioned, and in our tradition, also the mother. The inscription should note the Hebrew date of death and the individual's yahrzeit. On the top of the stone, it is traditional to inscribe the letters Pei and Nun, which stands for Po Nitman or Po Nikbal, here lies or here is buried. And on the bottom, the Hebrew words for may the soul of the deceased be bound up in the bond of life, everlasting, are usually represented by their initial letters of Taf, Nun, Tzadi, Bet, and Hey. And it has become customary to dedicate the tombstone formally, usually somewhere around the date of the first yahrzeit. And the most usual procedure is for a cloth or some sort of drape to be put over the stone, and that it may be formally unveiled. That's what the unveiling means. And reading of Psalms, Emelei Rachamim, Kaddish, etc. Yizkor is also a beautiful tradition, which is 4 times a year during services on the holidays of Yom Kippur, Shmini Atzeret at the end of Sukkot, on Shavuos, and on Passover, the last days. We recite Yizkor, which is a memorial service that is done in the synagogue, and everyone comes and remembers their loved ones, and you light at home a 25-hour candle. And there's also, I'm often asked if it's the first year, do I also attend a Yizkor service, or it's only after the first year of mourning? So some rabbis say, no, you should not attend Yizkor service for the first year, but some rabbis say, no, it actually helps you and comforts you as well to do that. So it is a nice custom to do as well. And the last thing, which is interesting, a lot of places, if your parents are still alive, you leave the synagogue during Yizkor. My father would always be against that custom. He would tell people, do not leave. The other mourners, the other people that are remembering, their loved ones, don't leave them, okay? Because, so that was really nice. I want to remember him by saying that. I clearly remember him telling people, please stay. Not everyone listened, and people always, would live, because that custom is very strong, especially in Israel, I think. But it says here that most rabbis today feel that this practice, rooted in the superstitious belief that being present for Yizkor will somehow tempt fate into bringing about one's parents' untimely death, should be discouraged. And that's, basically what my father said. Like, a lot of superstitious beliefs are around dying and death in Jewish tradition. And it's really much more meaningful to be there for the other mourners and to honor their memory together. And also during Yizkor, we memorialize the Holocaust victims and the IDF victims and other members of the community. So the whole community being there together in Yizkor is something really beautiful and memorable. I want to just ask if you could please rise. So, and thank you also for the staff that helped to come here and form the minyan. I want to just conclude by saying the Kaddish the Rabbanan in memory of my father, which is said after studying, which is exactly what we just did now.
Should we all say that, Rabbi? Should we all say that?
If anyone else is mourning, and they want to say that today. Do you want to say it? Yeah. Okay. You're still within a year. So it's here on page 20. And יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חיותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי בכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילן בין כל בריחתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, לאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. על ישראל ועל רבנן ועל תלמידי הון ועל כל תלמידי תלמידי הון ועל כל מן דעסקים באורייתא, די ואתרא הדין ודי בכל אתר ואתר. יהא להון ולכון שלמה רבה חינה וחיסלה ורחמים וחיים אריכין ומזונה לבריכה ופורקנה מן קדם עבורון די ושמיה ואמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. Okay, thank you very much, and for helping me also say Kaddish and dedicating this lesson in memory of my father, Rabbi Michael Graetz, Harav Mordechai Yosef Alevi ben Meir Miriam. Yehi zichro baruch, may his memory be for a blessing.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, thank you. I'll just
Rabbi,
stop
I
the
have one other
recording.
question. How